Alrighty, guys, let's wrap this lesson up with day 3. We are talking about the civil rights movement this week. Today, we're going to talk about activism in Montgomery. So, Montgomery is located along the Alabama River in south central Alabama, and it is the state capital and served as the original capital of the Confederacy during the Civil War. During the 1950s and 60s, Montgomery became an important part of the civil rights movement. It was a segregated city, which means that blacks and whites were not allowed to go to the same places together, and Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat led to the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1965, Dr. King led the march from Selma to Montgomery that led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that we talked about yesterday. The 16th Street Church bombing, we talked about that last week. Remember, on September 15th, 1963, a bomb did explode at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. The church there was a center for the African American community in town. Unfortunately, the blast did kill 4 young girls and 22 others were injured as well. The tragedy brought a great deal of attention to the civil rights movement. Many now realize that African Americans could not be treated equally if they were forced with such terrible violence. All right, University of Alabama. So in 1954, the Supreme Court ruled on Brown versus the Board of Education. It was decided in that ruling that schools must desegregate, which means blacks and whites must be allowed to go to the same school. It would take years, however, for that to become an actual reality. In 1963, the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, gave a speech declaring, "I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." So clearly, George Wallace was not a fan of integrating schools. He believed blacks and whites should remain separated. Later that year, he stood in the doorway of a building at the University of Alabama, hoping to stop 2 African American students from enrolling. This is a picture of him. This is George Wallace standing in the doorway, saying that he is not going to let them come into the building to enroll. President Kennedy took control of the Alabama National Guard and then asked Wallace to step aside. All righty, that is it for this week. Make sure you're always checking your folders for any assignments. You do have your quiz tomorrow, so make sure that at some point you go back through all of our lessons from this week before you take your quiz. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.